Wonder if in the Black British community we pigeonhole ourselves because our focus is on telling Black stories as opposed to great stories that have Black people in them. I don't know if I'm going to vote, and it just is quite disheartening. I saw 2 clips that have led me to make the conclusion, which is that I do not want Black women to go on these shows any longer. Welcome back, my people. Welcome back to It's That Deep, the podcast. If you've been here before, you already know the vibes. If you are new here, welcome. Thank you for choosing to spend some time with us, spend some time with me to gist and chop it up about all of the nonsense that's been happening in the news. Thank you for choosing me. I appreciate that. We are back for another round of stories, another round of conversation and discussion. I can't lie, my energy is a little bit low this week. Shout out to all my low iron babes. It is just what it is, but we move, we press on. I was going to say we hustle, but I don't believe in hustle culture because I'm just a girl. But we move. I've got what I think are quite interesting stories this week, but as I'm now saying every week, really, is what interests me what matters? I know it is because it's my podcast, but I'm curious to know what you guys have been reading in the news this week, what you guys have been thinking on and meditating on, and what your honourable picks would be. So, get in those comments, get in my community posts when I do put them out there on YouTube, get at me on Instagram. Some of my friends have actually been speaking to me about what I'm saying in my episodes. Some have been disagreeing, you know who you are. And some have been agreeing, and we've been having, a little chit chat back and forth. But it's just been cool to see like people are actually engaging with the content and have opinions. So I don't know, maybe we will create a segment where we actually get to hear from whoever is on the other side of this camera right now, or whoever is on the other side of AirPods. Like whoever's listening to this podcast, maybe we'll create a segment where we can actually hear from you, because I think that would be quite cool. But let's get straight into it. No more talk, no more jibber jabber. Let's get right into this week's honourable picks. So despite my excitement, I struggled a bit this week when it came to my honourable picks. Like, oh my gosh, happy new month. Happy February. Intrusive thought alert. What the heck? I completely forgot that we're in a new month. Welcome to February, guys. It's the month of love, she says with tears streaming down her eyes. No, it's the month of love. Welcome to February. I hope your January was good. I really do. Everyone said it either went too fast or too slow. People say this every year when it comes to January. I think January 2024 went at the perfect pace. Anyway, intrusive thought aside, let's get back to the honourable picks. I struggled a bit with honourable picks this week, but that's the beauty of, I guess, doing this, is you have to really dig and see where there are stories in what don't appear to be stories. And so my first honourable pick doesn't appear to be a story. Again, as with a lot of my honourable picks, you will not go in the news and find it. You will not go onto The Guardian or The Independent and read about this. But it sounds really bad to say I was scrolling on Twitter, because that is not my source of news. I just want to make that very clear. I do not go to Twitter for news, but it's one of my favourite apps. Anyway, I was on Twitter, and so Love Island is on again. Like, honestly, I haven't watched Love Island in a good few years, but I was literally saying to my brother and sister yesterday, like, the fatigue these audiences must be experiencing, because there's Love Island All Stars, there's Love Island OG, there's Love Island Games, there's Love Island Senior version. Like, there's a lot of Love Island going on at the moment. But anyway, so Love Island All Stars is on, which is the version where they get quote unquote failed islanders to come back and now fight for love amongst themselves. And it's like a new cohort of people, so it wouldn't have been people that was on their previous season or whatever. But I'm not watching it because I don't care for Love Island anymore. But on 2 separate occasions this week, I was on Twitter scrolling and I saw 2 clips that have led me to make the conclusion, which is a conclusion I've come to before, which is that I do not want Black women to go on these shows any longer. Clip number 1, Rochelle Humes' little sister, I do not know her name, I'm so sorry if you're listening to this, there is a clip of like, they do this pie challenge every year where they basically just get the opportunity to throw pies in each other's faces for various reasons. Rochelle Humes' little sister took it upon herself to throw a pie in Tyler's face. So if you don't or if you haven't watched Love Island, this might be like really, I'm gonna try to explain it. So the center of this pick is about a dark-skinned black lady called Kaz. Now Kaz was on a few seasons ago, and she had a whole hullabaloo with a man called Tyler. Tyler and Kaz were having a dalliance whilst they were on the show, and then he did her dirty. She also kind of did him dirty, but they eventually got back together and left the show together. I actually think they came like fourth or something in that year, but they broke up. And so he's come back into the villa now, obviously where Kaz is, and he's just messing her around a little bit. And so Rochelle Humes' little sister, I guess in like an act of female solidarity, takes the pie and throws it in Tyler's face, and her reasoning is because he's messing Kaz around. Clip number one. Clip number two, again, so in Kaz's year, before Tyler came into the villa, there was a young man by the name of Toby who she was coupled up with, and he also did her dirty for somebody else. And so now they're back in the villa, but obviously not on a relationship thing. It's like they're friends. And so there was a clip of Toby and Kaz sat together, and there's like tears streaming down Kaz's face, and Toby is like hugging her and like, oh my god, you're so strong, like it's okay, someone's gonna come in for you, like you don't deserve. And I just, honestly, my sympathy is really, it's nowhere to be found. I have no sympathy for you, Kaz. I'm so sorry. I have had it up to here. If you're on Spotify, I'm pointing at the sky. I've had it up to here. Border control is what I say. Do you know what I mean? Call me Sweater Braverman, I don't mind. We need to stop particularly dark-skinned black women from going on these shows, and it's mainly for the reason that it's incredibly exhausting. Like I said, I do not watch Love Island anymore. Maybe subconsciously, part of the reason why I don't is because emotionally it's quite exhausting to continuously watch dark-skinned black women go on these shows and be treated as if they comparatively are not worth emotional connection, they're not worth, romantic devotion, they're not worth anybody's time, really. And that's happened season in, season out. I'm bored of it. So that was like my initial thought, but that led me to my second train of thought, which is, and I said this before, I said this when Blue Therapy came out, not all representation is good representation. Do with that what you will. I think we need to go back to understanding at its core what diversity, equality and inclusion means, because they're lumped together, but actually they're very different things, and they have very different implications. So on a very surface level, like, we have diversity because we have the variety of, like, look at any British game show, The Traitors, Love Island, Big Brother. We have diversity. We have black faces, we have Asian faces, we have disabled people, we have white people. But diversity means niche. It doesn't mean a damn thing until we do the next step, which is equality and inclusion. So inclusion says, in the case of Love Island, that, bro, this is a show about dating. So I'm going to, as a producer of the show, take into account your preferences so that you can actually participate in the show rather than just be present, because being present is diversity. Just being there and being a face is what diversity is, but inclusion is enabling people to have an experience and actually be a participant. Like, literally think about any workplace, because diversity, equality and inclusion is a massive thing in like corporate England. They have diversity, they have black faces there, but inclusion says, okay, maybe you need to be on the leadership team, or you need to be somebody who makes decisions. So they're very different things. And I think we've been swindled, we've been hoodwinked into thinking that because we have diversity, that's it. Like, that's the be all and end all, and that's enough. When in reality, diversity, I put diversity and representation in the same category, but that's just the starting point. That's where the work begins. That ain't the end. Do you know what I mean? And I think Anyway, we're going to talk about this later because this is my main story, but maybe we've become so comfortable. I don't think we have actually, but I think there's a facet of people who have become so comfortable with just having diversity and representation that we don't interrogate the fact that there is actually no inclusion in these spaces. I also think it's worth investigating whether the representation is worth it. Is it needed? Like, to like my dark-skinned black woman, is it necessary for us to have this level of representation on shows like Love Island? Does it do anything for us? It doesn't do anything for me, because in the reality, although Love Island is a reality TV show, it is very far removed from reality. It's not what dating looks like on a day-to-day basis. We're not in the sun. It's not chiseled bodies and doing challenges and you're locked in, you know, one vicinity with these people for hours and for days on it. That's just not an accurate representation of reality. And so for me, I'm like, is this the hill to die on? Like, would I rather have representation in children's TV shows and children's books, or, you know, Newsround or something that my children in 10, 20 years can look at and, you know, feel good about? Or would I rather have somebody who looks like me prancing around in a bikini? Like, we need to decide what hill we want to die on and decide what representation matters. I appreciate it would be nice to see a dark-skinned black woman being loved on and appreciated, but do we need TV for that? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I don't know. In my mind, I can look at examples in my personal life, so I can draw representation from elsewhere. Maybe that's not the case for other people, but for me, it's not the hill to die on. Love Island, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't ginger me in that way. So I don't know. That's just my thought in terms of, like, is the representation necessary? But yeah, I'm genuinely curious for my dark-skinned black girls. Like, get at me. Let me know. Does it, or has Love Island in the past, where there's been positive representation, has it done anything for you? Like, yeah, I'm genuinely curious to know, because I'm not sure I can say it's done anything for me besides me just be like, oh, that's like with Whitney and Locken, for example. I'm like, I like them and I'm happy for them and I enjoy that they're having that, but it doesn't have any personal bearing on me as a dark-skinned black woman. But no, I'm really, really curious to know what, if any, impact having representation has had on you. So literally get at me, please. It would be really awkward if I ask this and then nobody messages me. So yeah, let me know. But we're going to move on to the second honourable pick. So let's do it. So honourable pick number 2. I just hit my microphone anyway. And we are going back to the world of politics for honourable pick number 2. I feel like it's only right. And we're going to talk about my favourite person ever, Mr. Keir Starmer. Psych. If you've been here long enough, you should know how I feel about Keir Starmer. What did I say last week? If he has one hater, it's me. It is me, Feyisara. Anyway, so there was an article this week in The Guardian about how Keir Starmer and the senior Labour team have started doing polls on the Muslim communities, I think in London first, but also around the country, to gauge basically where they stand ahead of the election. And there's a real sense that, I don't know if it's even a sense, it's very apparent that the Labour Party have lost the trust and maybe potentially the commitment of Muslim communities around the country because of their stance, or lack thereof, on the issue of Palestinian genocide. So I was doing some reading, and there's a Muslim census. I didn't know that was a thing. Pretty cool. But there's a census that, the way the country takes a census every 10 years, is it? There's a Muslim census, and in the last general election it was revealed that 71% of Muslim voters voted Labour. So a very big chunk of that community have their roots and their stakes in Labour, and it's like a guaranteed win. Also bearing in mind that a lot of like Muslim communities have that intersection of class. So for example, in London there are certain constituencies that are just Labour strongholds because there's such a large Muslim population there, Tower Hamlets for example, and maybe up in the north, like certain places in Birmingham. So there's also that intersection of class. But statistically and historically, Muslim people in this country have voted Labour. But they took a recent, the Muslim census took like a recent survey, and they said that the commitment from Muslim voters to Labour has dropped from like 65% to 5%, which is a massive jump, like a massive jump. And so, yeah, Keir Starmer's, he's bugging out. He's really bugging out, because if they do not give him their vote, and I say give him their vote, we'll talk on another episode about why we don't actually vote for Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer. That's just not how it works. But if they don't give Labour their vote, they're in trouble big time. Like, they're really in trouble. And anyway, I've said it before. Like, I've said, particularly in an election year, it's so important to watch how these politicians move. It's so important to watch how strategic they are and how tactical they are, because it's almost like when you're dating someone and they do all the right things in the beginning. So they're courting, like, that's what they're doing now to the Muslim community. They're courting you, they're asking questions, they're interested, they take note of what you like, what you don't like. And then maybe, anyway, God forbid it's my portion, but a year into the relationship or a few months into the relationship, they relax. And so what was a priority for them concerning you is no longer a priority. And they forget what your interests are, or their behavior just turns toxic, basically. And that's what we're seeing happen here. The Muslim community have they've expressed so much what their stance is, and obviously is varied, and they're not a monolith, whatever, but they've expressed continuously what their stance is and what they believe about this Palestine-Israel issue. They went to the streets to protest with many other people. They went to the streets to protest. They emailed their MPs. They were very vocal about the fact that they do not support, and they do not want their MPs to support this genocide. And so if you're they did all of that with the faith in democracy and believing that their MPs who were voted in by them would work and honour the intentions of the people who voted them, or honour the wishes of the people who voted them in. But that did not happen. Labour enforced their whip and they went their entire other route. And so now they're running back and trying to scramble and trying to understand why they've lost, or they could potentially lose that vote. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's very dumb. What do you think? What do you think would happen? Without being incredibly pessimistic, it has really put a dent in the gravity I gave to democracy before, because there is this sort of pattern that we see regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum from MPs and politicians, where they do, like, in the words of Destiny's Child, they cater to you when it's time to get your votes. They butter you up. That's what pandering is, no? You see it in America. They go to black churches and they sing like old gospel songs and everyone gets excited and gives them their vote. Then 2 years into the presidency, they do whatever the heck they want. Like, I'm not sure I'm there yet, but slowly I'm like, what's the point? What's the point? Because if you're just going to turn around and do whatever the hell you want, like, why would I give you my vote? And I've seen a lot of the commentary on this particular issue, but from this like Gen Z millennial circle in general, where a lot of people on a principle thing don't know where they're gonna give that, like, they don't know if they're gonna vote, and if they do, who they're giving their vote to. And I say a principle thing because, again, we in some regards don't give our votes to Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer, or technically Labour or Conservative. We give our vote to our MP, who obviously represents either one of those parties. But I've seen a lot of, conversation about, like, I don't know if I'm going to vote. And it just is quite disheartening, because that's just not what democracy, like, people shouldn't feel like, well, what's the point in voting if it's not going to be listened to anyway? People shouldn't feel like democracy doesn't work, not in a first world country. There's so much disillusionment, if that's a word. There's so much of it. And I honestly can't call how this election will go. I can't call who will, and I'm not even, Omar, at this point, I'm not sure I want either one of them. I'm not sure I want Labour or Conservative. I don't know. I don't, genuinely, and I feel like a lot of people feel like me, where it's like, I don't know, bro. I have no clue. Okay, cool. So my main story for this week, I'm going to be honest, I'm quite happy with how this episode is going. It's been, like I said, it's been a long week and my iron is low, and there was the lack of stories, but I prayed and I was like, Holy Spirit, please, because I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but I'm having fun so far. I'm enjoying it. My main story this week, if you know me personally, I'm dancing if you're on Spotify. If you know me personally, you know that I love this topic, and it just butters my bread. It butters my bread. I love it. I love talking about TV. And so that's what my main story this week is going to be, because on Monday, Channel 4 announced that they are going to cut over 200 jobs. And this is like, so the top line in a lot of these articles was saying how this is in an attempt to move towards digital content, so content that sits more so on YouTube or on social media. And if you, over the last few years, if you look at the trajectory, I mean, I guess of TV in general, but of Channel 4, there has been this real push for digital content. So they started this new brand, Channel 4.0. Had the privilege of working on one of their shows, really quite fun. But they've been pushing towards that style content. So whatever sits on YouTube, whatever could be on their streaming service, because streaming is a very big thing in TV right now. You know, the influencer-led shows where it doesn't cost as much to make, but actually, I don't want to say you get more eyes, because I just don't think that's true, but there's eyes on it, Sha. So they announced that, and I was like, okay, for me, that's just interesting to know anyway. But I was like, okay, why is this relevant? Or why could this be relevant? It's that deep. And then later on this week, Time magazine released an article, really good article, with Issa Rae. And she's basically in that article talking about the state of Hollywood and how Hollywood is no longer working, so to speak, for people like her and for creators like her. And then I went, ding, that's the story right there. If we marry the two, there is a conversation here to be had about quote unquote black content. I'm rolling my eyes on Spotify if you can't see, because I think we also need to talk about what the heck black content is, because I don't think we have a definition for that. I guess for people who like watch TV religiously the way I do, you would know that there's been a trend of, again, I'm rolling my eyes deeply here, but quote unquote black shows being cancelled. So Riches in the UK got cancelled. What else is there? Speaking of Issa Rae, 2 of her shows got cancelled. She had a show called Rap-ish, and then she also had a reality show that was cancelled. There's stuff like High Life back here in the UK didn't get picked up for a second season. So there's a trend of, again, black shows, you know, not really being taken seriously. And I think at the core of it, you know, what we're seeing is a real reneging on a lot of the commitments that Hollywood, and also whatever the British equivalent of Hollywood is, like the commitments they made to black creatives, black TV makers in light of 2020 and the George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matter and all of these things. They're slowly rolling them back. Slowly rolling them back. And the reason I started this main story with Channel 4 is because, again, like looking at the history of Channel 4, when they started in the 80s, they came out as like, they wanted to be the one broadcaster that reflected the diversity of modern Britain. Like, that's in their mission statement. They came out straight out the gate. They were like, we want to reflect modern Britain. We want to show all shapes, colours, sizes. That was their MO. You know, they were the only broadcaster at the time to air Desmond's, which is like in the Hall of Fame of Black British TV shows. Desmond sits at the top. Do you know what I mean? And I wonder now, after cutting 200 jobs, or it's coming up to 250, they said, like, is it possible to fulfill that commitment that they made back in the 80s, 40 years ago? Also, I guess a second point maybe, sorry guys, this is coming out like a stream of consciousness, which is not what I intended, but I really hope you're not bored. But you know, even in light of Issa Rae's article and Channel 4, you know, cuts, there was also another conversation this week, again on Twitter. Guys, I'm sorry, I do more things than spend my time on Twitter, but anyway, there was a conversation this week about the type of black shows we're seeing, because there have been rumors that Netflix want to do a Top Boy spin-off with one of the characters. I didn't watch Top Boy, so I'm not really invested, but there was a tweet somebody made about how, like, we're tired of the gang shows, we're tired of, you know, the hood, the estate shows. Like, let's do, basically elevate, let's show and depict black people in a more elevated manner. And I'm trying to tie all of these themes together here because, you know, there's something to be said about like a formula that works. So when we're talking about Channel 4's cutting jobs, that's going to have an impact on the black, I just hate that phrase, sorry, I really hate that phrase, but on the quote unquote black content that we see, because where the priority is now money and maybe not quality of content, they're going to go back to what works. They're going to go back to the formulas that they've seen works. And we all know Top Boy works. The Top Boys of the world work because there's history to show that audiences eat that up, but they don't eat up at Riches. They don't eat up, well, I hope they eat up Dreaming Whilst Black because that was brilliant, but they don't eat that up. So why would they invest their time and their money when it's a game about money in something that doesn't bring money? Issa Rae said it in her interview, and I keep referencing Issa Rae because actually, despite the fact that America is much bigger than us, they have way more cultural clout, like comparatively. Actually, we're seeing almost a mirror reflection what's happening in the UK and in the US, because Issa Rae, I mean, this is big Issa Rae of Insecure. Like, she's, to many people, made it. And in that article with Time, she says, like, these execs want to go with safe stories. It's about money. Like, nobody's trying to take a risk on a story that they don't know works. So they're going back to what's quote unquote safe. They're going back to what they've seen gets reception. And so I also think it's interesting that we're seeing this mirror here between the UK and the US. But my last point on this is, I wonder if we are pigeonholing ourselves by naming, and that's why at multiple points during this main story I have rolled my eyes, because I wonder if we're pigeonholing ourselves by labeling things black content, particularly because I do not feel we have a coherent definition of what black content is. You know, does black content mean there's a fully black cast or majority black cast? Is it that the cast and crew have to be fully black? Like, we don't have definitions for what black content is, and so we can't necessarily even advocate for it if we don't have that shared definition. I was again reading the commentary around like, oh, Rich has got cancelled, Top Boy, but actually, would Top Boy classify as black content when it was made by a white guy? Would it? I don't know that we can call that black content. And then there's also, again, going back to the fact that we're not a monolith. I don't see myself in Top Boy, but I'm black, but it doesn't reflect my experiences. So does that make it black content? So I think, you know, we need to decide what black content is. And then, even then, to be honest with you, I think we do ourselves a disservice by framing things as black content, because immediately once it has that label, it tells audiences what it's going to be. And it almost excludes audiences from being able to engage with it, because it's like, well, that's just for black people. But actually, what if we went back to just telling great stories that happen to have black people in it? Like, Insecure was a great story, period. It felt, but like, I enjoyed it more because it had black people, it had people who looked like me in it. But if you'd made those people white or Latino, the story still would have been great. Succession's a great story. I don't see myself in it. I'm not part of the 1%. I'm not white. I'm not part of a media conglomerate family, but it's a great story regardless. And at the core of it, it's a story about family dynamics that, regardless of gender, regardless of race, people can relate to. And I wonder if in the Black British community, we pigeonhole ourselves because our focus is on telling Black stories as opposed to great stories that have Black people in them. Maybe that's what's happening here. I don't know. That was my stream of consciousness. It just, guys, it did not stop. I'm so sorry, and I hope it made sense to you guys. It felt more like a rant than a main story, but I was trying to marry this thing of like Channel 4 cutting jobs. Channel 4, the only broadcaster in the UK who have really said, I'm committed to telling diverse stories, not even just race, disability, gender, religion. Channel 4 cutting jobs, marrying that with Issa Rae's Time magazine, so something similar is happening in the US, and then also marrying it with the commentary that's been happening on social media about the lack of diverse Black content. I'm trying to just marry all three of those together. I'm not sure how well I did it, but let me know your thoughts. As always, yeah, that's this week's stories. Let me know what your thoughts are, because as I say after every segment, I just want to know what you guys are thinking. Maybe I'm overthinking it too much, and it's like, okay, but Top Boy is like, we got a Top Boy, like we got it, so we should just be happy with it. I don't know. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Yeah, I said I was going to find a way to outro, and I did not do it, so I failed my homework. Who's gonna beat me? Are you gonna beat me? You're not gonna beat me, so deal with it. But thank you so much for joining me for It's That Deep, episode 8. We're going full speed ahead. I'm gonna bang out these episodes. You know, maybe we'll go for 52 out of 52. Maybe we'll do it. I don't know. I might need a break at some point, but I'm enjoying these. I hope you are too. Again, bring your people in. If you know people are interested in this type of content, bring them in, man. But it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt anyone. Yeah, this is outrageous waffle at this point. This is outrageous. So I really need to think of an outro. Give me ideas. That wraps up another episode of It's That Deep. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching, for listening, for interacting. I actually feel like I've had some good interaction, so I really appreciate it. And I'll see you here next week. I'll meet you here. Omar, I'm tired, but I will see you next week for another round of stories. Peace.